Dear friends, we have today with us the Deputy Program Director for the MENA portfolio at European Council on Foreign Relations, Ellie Geranmayeh. We are lucky enough to have you, and thank you for being with us. The current situation around Iran today and the U.S. pressure, following the withdrawal of the U.S. from the JCPOA, and now the U.S. pressure on everything what Iran doing in its foreign policy is quite not well. It's seen from different capitals, but it's not well prepared. Given that there are long-term goals for the American foreign policy. Given this context, where do you see Russia and Europe positions should be? Do you think that Russia and Europe, some European countries, E3, could move towards something which could protect, if not JCPOA as itself, but maybe create some new deals around Iran that could prevent some escalation, some regional escalation that also, could be there on the ground in different parts of the region. So what is your opinion on this? What Russia and Europe can do, and what is the situation around the
Sure. So I think both Russia and Europe have had a tough time understanding Washington's policy on Iran since President Trump came into office. It wasn't clear whether he was going to keep the US part of the deal or withdraw, and what the maximum pressure campaign would involve. I think now, particularly since May of this year, the picture is becoming more clear in that there is a low common denominator amongst President Trump and his senior advisors, that they want to leave the Iran nuclear agreement, to which Russia and the E3 are parties to, together with China and Iran, and that they should provide a maximum pressure campaign on Iran, but for different means. So, for example, a lot of people would say President Trump personally would want to have a negotiated track with the president of Iran or counterparts inside the Iranian leadership, that he actually wants to avoid a military conflict in the region right before an election year comes around the corner. But then there are other characters in his administration like Bolton and more hawkish figures on Iran policy. The president himself has joked that Bolton would have gotten him into several wars by this stage, including on Iran, had it not been for President Trump moderating his positions. And then there are others within the administration that simply want Iran to be in a very weak position, whether that's regionally, whether that's politically or economically. So they all agree that increasing this sanctions policy is the right way forward. Now, this has created a lot of problems, not just for Iran, obviously, as the main target of this campaign, but also Europeans and the Russians in their efforts to keep Iran party to this nuclear deal. Now, I think that particularly in light of Iran's announcement earlier in May, that it was going to cease complying with certain aspects of the nuclear deal. There has been some more coordination between the members of this agreement, including Russia and China, with the Europeans, to see what sort of a package they can put together within this 60-day timeline that Iran has put forward. Now, I think there are areas where Europe has the responsibility and also the added value to take action. So we're seeing much more effort behind this European special purpose vehicle for trade with Iran, which is called INSTEX. But the Europeans have made clear that they cannot buy Iranian oil, for example. That they are looking to China to step in, and even possibly Russia to step in with some mechanism for continued purchase of Iranian oil. The other aspect of this nuclear deal is, for example, certain nuclear commitments by Iran. Here, particularly in relation to its heavy water stockpile and low enriched uranium stockpile. Now, the Europeans here are looking to Russian cooperation to help Iran not breach those levels set under the deal. And they hope that they can see some active steps from Russia, whether that's, for example, purchasing the stockpile from Iran or encouraging Iran to slow down the pace of its enrichment activities to avoid hitting those caps. So I do think that there is more room than on probably any other issue in the Middle East, for the Europeans, particularly these E3 capitals and Moscow, to cooperate on convincing Iran to stay party to this agreement, which still, for Europe, for Russia, and for China, remains a keystone of security in the Middle East region.
Yeah, thank you. But there is one more, I think last question, if we may. When we talk about Russia's position on it, we heard that Russia's president, Vladimir Putin, said that we can't save everyone every time.
Yes.
So how it was assessed in the European capitals?
So I think that there's been several readings of it that I've heard. One reading is a disappointment at Moscow's position that they are offshoring nuclear security to the Europeans. So they're saying, we can't do anymore, we're not going to do anymore, so it's Europe's problem to deal with in terms of keeping Iran party to this deal. Then there is another reading which says, okay, there are real limits to what economically Russia can offer Iran in this context. But as I said, there are some expectation that on nuclear cooperation, Russia, through its companies that are a bit more shielded from US secondary sanctions, let's say, on the political level, they might be able to do a bit more on the civil nuclear cooperation front. And actually, there has been, over the past year, as the Europeans have really struggled to keep the United States on board with this agreement or prevent them from taking further damaging acts, there has been some openings to have further talks with the Russians. But as I said, there is this concern in Europe that Russia is increasingly distancing itself from protecting the nuclear deal, and actually that it could take some more steps. And there were some people that have interpreted, for example, official statements from Russia in reaction to the US imposing an oil embargo, essentially on Iran, as very cautiously worded, and not the sort of principled stance against secondary sanctions and the US overuse of sanctions that they may have expected from both Russia and actually also Beijing. And I think what this is a reflection of really is that Iran may be becoming the sacrificial lamb to all of these global powers having much bigger strategic problems with one another. So China is having trade talks with the US that it doesn't want to derail because of Iran. Moscow itself has a key interest in getting some of the sanctions that the West has imposed eased and having a better, more improved relationship with the United States that doesn't necessarily want to damage because it's going to protect Iran in Syria or it's going to protect the nuclear deal that President Trump is very allergic to. And the Europeans also are in a position where the US has questioned the keystones of the transatlantic relations, which is participation in NATO, for example, and they are facing trade tariffs from their closest ally, the United States. Yeah, and so again, here, they will only politically be able to go so far in protecting Iran. Now, I think the last year, Iran has been very patient. This term strategic patience is being used for Iran. But now, as Iran has taken stock of what all of the parties to the nuclear deal are able to give realistically, I think we're seeing Iran in the last few weeks step up its own response.
They were waiting for Europeans.
They were. I think they were waiting also to see what the impact of all restrictions would be, and they've seen a hardening of the position from the United States with this very unprecedented move not to give any waivers for purchase of Iranian oil. So this puts the Islamic Republic in a very uncharted territory. And I think we've seen, whether that's on the regional issue or their position on the nuclear deal, that they are taking now actions that will impose a cost, not just to the United States, but potentially to other members of this nuclear deal, to basically say that for Tehran, the current position is untenable and they need to change the strategic calculations of all the parties involved.
Yeah, interesting. So thank you
Pleasure.
for these comments, and I think we can end here. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent.